The first thing I want to say is I learned more about OBS on streaming. The you can have two profiles that go to two channels. So we now have a youtube.com RTP AWS, I think. Uh, RTP AWS. So we've literally we've got a couple of channels up. Well, actually, this is going to me. This is from where we did it before, but I now have these things up, so they're there. So that's good. We've got our own channel. If I go to your videos, I think it will actually just be the stuff for AWS, and it's all just live stuff, and so it shows that we're streaming now. So that's kind of good. We can maybe have people be able to look at the live this they can either look at the live stream rather than coming here, or they could look at it after the fact. Uh, Raja, I think you were the one that pointed out that this link was broken here.
Oh, that's
That
the
was
Slack
you,
link.
right?
The
That was
Slack
you,
link.
hot sir.
It's a Slack link, not the
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah. That Slack link. Yep. This one here. Yep, that was broken. So on that, there are some issues. That one got closed. Uh, I just started this website, I think, in December or January. I'm not sure when was the first thing, but that's the way to do it. Like if you want to be in the organizers list, I can include you in the organizers. It'll still go through as you want to do updates. You're doing it updates via pull request. I like Linus Torvalds' approach to the Linux kernel. It's kind of similar to what I did when I worked for Hewlett Packard Enterprises. I'm in Silicon Valley, but there's a guy who's an architect on the East Coast. And if I wanted to put stuff to their Git repo, it was basically pull request. People reviewed them, and once they reviewed them, they approved them, and it actually worked out pretty good. So I've been doing that since. Plus, I've got pull requests to other open source projects, and they do them the same kind of way. Um, but that's that. There are other things on this website that need to be modified. Um, the the benefit is this is kind of like a tracker. You can identify things that are problematic, and you can then track whether they're done. And by making it, and how this varies from the GCP users group is the GCP users group, I'm trying not to spend much money. I spend a lot of money out of pocket trying to create a website so that I have something for myself that is, I can keep track of what I've done and I keep improving it. And I'm willing to pay money out of pocket to do that. But for the stuff that we do there, it's kind of like painting by numbers. We just have labs. We do labs via Quick Labs, and you get some credits. You go do a lab, and we did what we did earlier today. Which I mean, Adrian, I mean, like, what do you think? You get something out of it, but you don't get a lot out of it. I get a lot more out of this by building this. Um, so, as an example, talking about this one that was closed, that Raja was saying the Slack needed to be updated. When I was doing this, I was doing it via, I'm using Developers Console, and I'm looking at the sources. I've got a uh, actually, I think this. Actually, let me rephrase that. I found the problem originally with my skink.net website, which is also hosted on AWS, and it had a problem, and that is I'm making changes, like I'm putting in this thing here, but when I actually looked at the website, it wasn't being updated. So if I add a folder to this workspace, let's add the add this website. Wow. So if I go down here to, there's a make file at the top. One of the things that I learned is you can do this command AWS CloudFront list distributions. It will show you the different distributions that you have. And then based upon that distribution, I can get an ID, and then I can tell it, I want you to invalidate that CloudFront, CDN, content delivery network, whatever. And so then when I go up and I pull up a web page, it's like it's what I just put up versus what's in a cache, and it takes like an hour for me to see my changes. And so when it came time to update to that link here, it was like already there, and I could post it back and forth in Slack and verify it. So that's that. So let's talk. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the kill switch. So for the kill switch, do I have it up here? It's not showing up in my cache yet. So part part of the reason that I came up with this kill switch is I had it done previously for GCP, and this is why. Let's go to this is why this is more important to me on AWS than the other one. If I go to this billing, oh, right there it is. See, go back. Well, let me just go back. You can see it right there. Uh, the estimated cost was like going to be like $400. Since I've turned stuff off, it's went down a lot. But I used like 167 of recognition. I don't. I'm unemployed at the moment. I'm living off my stock dividends. I can handle this, but I don't want to be handling it. Also, this is not costing me any money because AWS is giving me money. Google is not, but AWS, I get money through the users group programs to cover it. But I don't want to be excessive to them either. You know, it's kind of like if you have a job and you have the ability to do expense reports, if you keep your expense reports low, you're a good employee. If you keep your expense reports high and you're not careful, then even though you're technically good, you're not a good employee because you're wasting money. So I have that same kind of mindset with this. In order to do this, it's a little different than GCP. With GCP, you basically just say, and I'll pull up this guy's repo here as well. So with GCP, got everybody here. Hey, welcome. With GCP, the way to implement a kill switch is you just look at what your charges are. If it exceeds a budget, it goes to pub sub. You then trigger a cloud function off of that pub sub to disable billing. If billing is disabled for a project, all aspects of the project are shut down, right? That's kind of, I like that. That's kind of easy. It takes you like an hour to do. AWS, it's more flexible, and I'll show you what this guy did and how I did it differently. He used this thing called SAM. I don't know if any of you guys there know anything about SAM. You can come off mute and tell me about it. Serverless application model. I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks like he is setting up a Lambda, but he's setting up the Lambda function just via the CLI. I think that's what it is. So, what is SAM? um, yada 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 benefits, yada yada yada. I think it's a wrapper, kind of like Amplify is a wrapper around Elastic Beanstalk. But the way that I did it was I went over to Lambda and I created this kill switch. I've been doing JavaScript lately as an effort to learn more uh, relative to JavaScript versus everything else instead of Python. And plus, this guy did his code via Python. He did his code via Node.js. So, and this is not deployed. So this is what we're looking at last. Basically, he set up an exports handler, and he had disabling CloudFront and disabling API gateways in here. I thought, based upon looking at the docs and the JavaScript, I was going to have to do something similar to what I did on the hackathon, and that is set up the AWS SDK, which all like here you're importing it, setting it up, and let's do this. This is the docs that I'm using. If you go, let's go all the way to the top. So it's in the config. I thought I was going to have to do this kind of stuff where you literally have to give it your credentials to say, this is me with these permissions to use AWS. There's an alternative way to set your credentials, and that is if you have a Lambda function, you can set it in the environment. So, like if I go to configuration and I go to general configuration, actually, that it also I may be confusing this with not okay. Elastic, pardon me. So Elastic Beanstalk, you have a configuration section and then you have an environment. I was a little confused because I was expecting to see that kind of thing in. Let's go to an Elastic Beanstalk. I know this one is wrong, so I can show it to you. If you go to configuration on Elastic Beanstalk, in actually, let's see. I think I don't want to give away something that's yeah. So here, so this was fine. This one doesn't have any environment variables, so you can literally put whatever it is you want as a variable, and then when your code runs within this Elastic Beanstalk using Node.js, you can query the environment and you can get those hidden things and you can update the permissions of that app, right? But when you look at a Lambda function, which is just an abstract, it all gets back to EC2 is the basis. From EC2, you have Elastic Beanstalk. Further simplifying it is lambdas. Further doing that again is light cell, but I didn't want to do that. I want to do the same kind of thing, but when you go to configuration, there's nothing there. So I was like, well, how do you do it? It turns out the way you do it is it's via the roles. So if I go down to, this is it. Let's see if there's a resource section. Uh, resource, where is it? Permissions. So in here, he's saying that this guy has a execution thread, and based upon that execution thread is what his permissions are. So this code uses API gateway, but he also uses S3. And so, like on S3, he has the permissions. If I were to go in there and I could go to policy, he's saying that he can do anything to all S3 buckets. And so you don't configure the SDK, you configure it here. So that's a little different. I thought it was interesting. And it's based upon the role. By default, you get CloudWatch, and this is so that you can log on it, and that's added by default. But because this has a trigger from SNS to say when my budget hits a certain amount, it puts something in the SNS bucket, and then because this is a trigger, right? This trigger calls this guy. He runs with an execution role. Based upon his execution role, these are the resources and the permissions that he has. Does that make sense? Somewhat. So that's that. So then if you go back to the code, and if the lambda function is too big, you can't edit it in here. But so basically what happens on this one, and it's still tentative at what's going on. uh I put I kept kind of like the blueprint code in here so I can look at the difference. It has disable microservices. I'm not disabling CloudFront. That will be added. I'm trying to do disable API gateways, and then I'm going to call this disable recognition. I haven't got that worked out yet, but this part does work. And you can look at it. He's saying he's going to do a call on set stage limits, and he's going to set the throttling to 0. So this is for a particular API gateway. I only have one at the moment, and the one that I have at the moment is this guy here. So let's see if I got another console. And I'll show you all. I the last time we were doing this, we were trying to work with. I had it. Remember, I told you there's two different types of API gateways. There's API gateways that use the traditional REST version, and then I was trying to get in the new HTTP version. The HTTP version is like 75% cheaper than the REST version. Uh, so this is the REST version. If we have time, we can start on trying to do it the other way. Let's see if we can pull up this. So basically, there's a resource, there's a model, there's a resource, and then there's a method. I should show you this because I did get this working, and I kind of thought it was kind of cool. This just real quick. This is a model showing that I have a bounding box. A bounding box has basically 4 required components: top, left, bottom, right, and then a bounding boxes would be an array of those items. And I don't even have to spell it out. It's nested. This bit here refers back to this, which gets you back to a bounding box. So that's the model. These are the resources. The resources, I have a method. The method is it comes over and does this. If I test it, it may actually call this lambda. But before I do that, let's look at the stage. It's associated with a stage. Here we are, stages. I only have a dev stage. And right now you can see that the throttling is enabled. And I could have 100 requests per second, and I could still have 100 requests in burst. That's how they bill you. They don't bill you based upon having it, I don't think. I think they bill you based upon how many calls are there. And I don't even have it cached. But let's go back to the resource, go to the post, and let's see if we test it. Because if we do, no, nope, 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 nope. Now I see what's going to happen. This, okay, so let's go back to, let me go back to the resource, and we'll pull up the model. And let's pull up a bounding box. Copy. Go back to the resources. Post. Test. See if we can actually get it to work. All right, Adrian. Thanks. Have a good one. See if we can test it. Actually, you don't even do that. You just do 4. And then we'll do like so. So these are all going to be 1, 2, 3. All right, so we've got to wrap this in a thing because this is 1. And then we're going to have another bounding box because we're on the bounding boxes. And because this is in an array, we're going to put an array brace. And let's see if this will work. Yeah. So those are 2 bounding boxes, which definitely have a. Here are 2 more bounding boxes that overlap, right? If they're on top of one another, they definitely overlap. This is, do they overlap if they're offset? That should be true. But if we bump this to 3, 3, 5, 5, then it's just on the corner. That will still overlap because it's on the corner. But if we change this to 4 and 4, it's false because now they don't overlap. So you can test it from here, yada, yada, yada. But let's go and let's look at stages. Now we'll test the kill switch. So you can see it's definitely at 100 and 100. Let's kind of make it like that. I'm not going to deploy it because the code that I've got is incomplete. But let's go over here to configure test events. So this is just saying that something is coming in. I'm not even setting up a topic or anything because it doesn't really matter. It's just the fact that it's triggered. If it's triggered, then this code should disable, right? Disable API gateways. And so yes, he put something in SNS. There's something there. And if I go back over here, where is the refresh? Someone's here. Sure. I guess I'm just going to have to refresh the page. I was looking to see if it had an overall refresh. Yeah. So now it has throttled it. So it's essentially turned off the API gateway. So I won't have any more charges from the API gateway. I'm going to try to improve that for the recognition, but I don't even have a model in recognition at this point. I'll leave this disabled. I don't really care at the moment. But my biggest cost was over in recognition. If we look at projects, there's just this testy one here, and there's actually no model associated with it. Which gets back to the whole goal of the next thing of the hackathon. This is all for this hackathon. If you're unfamiliar with it, I'm trying to get people to get this. This is the hackathon that I submitted for the DevPost disaster response hackathon via DevPost. It was it ended last Monday, and basically this repo has 2 Elastic Beanstalk apps. It talks, and this is Elastic Beanstalk. It talks to the North Carolina Department of Transportation webcams. The webcams look something like this. These are the current shots. Sometimes the you'll have cameras that are they're not putting up an image. Sometimes the images will be like this, where it's like they've got a hood over the camera. Basically, they move the cameras and they've moved this camera so it's looking so far up that he's seeing the hood. They are of different sizes, so not only will they move, the cameras are in different angles. So there's a lot of variability there. But I wanted to be able to take those images, upload them to S3, from S3, run custom labels from recognition to identify different locations of the image. And I use the SageMaker Ground Truth to label the images that I supplied to the models that I built with recognition. And then based upon what the bounding boxes that came back, calling this collision detection routine. And then eventually I was trying to get over here to do a Sobel diff, but this model was so bad I couldn't get the objects to detect properly. So like even though I put in stuff for seam and ice, sometimes it would identify ice as the dotted white lines on the road. Let's see if I can show you one. It would identify because the ice looked a lot like this. This got detected as an ice. So it was really bad, didn't work very well, but I'm still improving upon it, and I'm improving upon it on another subsequent dev post hackathon, which if you go to dev post, it's this AWS deep learning challenge. So the first one was this. We've got 16 days left for this one. I'm trying to do something for it. Um, on my hackathons, I've done one before, and that was this virtual sensors. This was a GCP thing with TF. It was with TensorFlow on GCP. This is Icy Bridge for this one. This is Icy Bridge for the disaster response. I'm just redoing it because these hackathons started about the same time and they've been running for a while. I'm just trying to do it for this guy. This was Adrian, the guy that was just here. I was helping him out on his. He was competing against me, but I'm helping him out some. What I would like to do is get you guys to help me out some because there's a whole bunch of work to be done, and it's a lot easier the more people you got. So with that said, let me show you what I've been doing relative to that. Okay, before I do that, let me show you this. So part of the problem with this, see that camera angle is skewed. So if you look over here, this is a camera angle, right? And so like if I identified this as a bridge and this as a bridge, I don't think there was enough info to distinguish this bridge from those roads. This seam, which divides the elevated portion versus the non-elevated portion, and chances are underneath here, because you got airflow underneath it, this will be colder and be much more susceptible to icing than this region. And if you're trying to draw ice on these different locations, the ice tended to be along this line and up into the roadway on the later stages of the day. I can't draw a bounding box like a square like this to show that bounding box. I have to show just the ice locations, and it made kind of like a staggered section. but they also kind of looked similar to that. So that was a problem. So what I'm going to try to do is rotate the angle, rotate, because I don't control these cameras, right? These cameras are from the government, and I don't have a lot of, I can't tell them, hey, don't rotate the cameras, or hey, I want you to place your camera in a certain location, or hey, I don't want a camera that's got fisheye in it. See how the camera angle is changing? I don't think those roadways change like that. So what I'm and they're awful. Also, they're not centered. That camera is kind of offset. But to subset the problem, this particular bridge, I have archive photos of where it was looking at the bridge before and after, uh, before the snowstorm hit, the day of the snowstorm hit, and I've got that for two different snowstorms. Some of the other cameras are bigger and higher quality images and show this seam a lot better, but this one, that's the way he looks, and he's consistent, so I'm going to go with him. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it so that I can kind of crop the photo, and then with the photo I can identify the bridge, and then I can identify the bounding box. So I could take a live image, rotate it, and then go off and do the calculations. And if the bridge is a different angle when it's rotated, if it doesn't identify the bridge, we know like there's a problem, and I can just skip that and not have to worry about it. Much like I can say, oh, camera image is not available, or this is a night shot and I can't even see the bridge. But the goal is to locate that bounding box so that I can do this kind of code. So here is a different bridge, but if I take that image and it's a small image, I can do a Sobel diff, and, or, and I can say these are the edges, and I can then compare them. So just taking two shots of that bridge, no snow, snow. You can see with your naked eye, right here is a seam, right here there's no seam. So what I did previously was I converted them to grayscale, and then I did my diff. This is not that apparent, but if I do this, open image and new tab, and if I zoom this thing in and you scroll down, you can see that that seam is there, but in the other one, you can see that it's not. And then it's just a matter of image processing to say, hey, where in the bounding box for where the seam is, I've got a change, and that change is most likely due to ice. And that's how I'll so there'll be like some machine learning, but there'll also be some image processing to determine whether or not we have something. And then if we really get it down pat, like really to be more predictive, we can bound it with doing this. I've saved, I have some of the uh, weather here. So this is showing like the images, but more importantly, this is like the weather report on the 2 weeks where there are snowstorms, right? And your ice is going to be the time that you can have ice is it's not. We've got some of the things in that regard are, did you have snow? After you had snow, did the temperature rise enough to melt? And then did it get cold again enough that after it melted, the ice refroze, the water refroze to ice, and it was cold enough that it would be smooth and make a smooth surface? That would be more slippery. And so eventually I'll get that added in as well, and that will be helpful. that's about it. The only thing I did relative to the new image rotations was basically I created this one to make the grayscale and the rotate, and all I did was show what the libraries I'm using, loading the images versus via the Python image library and NumPy, showing how that's done. Uh, that the first one was a PNG. This is a JPEG, and then I basically just got the stubs for reading it as grayscale. I hadn't even got the image rotations in yet, but that's where I'm at. It's a lot to do about nothing, but, but that's it. Anything you guys got to say or talk about?
So you're exploring Gluon also, right? Gluon CV.
Let me turn the volume up so I can hear you. I can't hear that well. Say again.
So you are exploring Gluon CV.
Yeah. So at this point in time, I'm not using anything with Gluon CV, but I've used Gluon CV and MXNet previously. I'm not an expert, I but I know enough that like I got through a class that there's a Coursera class that AWS sponsors on that. I'm trying to get to that point, but I'm also trying to get it so that I have a web app, and the web app is let me let me present one once more. Sorry. So if you ever read any of these things on LinkedIn, they talk about you got to have something that's running and running quickly. So this is the front end, right? So I think the bridges. This was really just kind of like looking at the data, and I could say, hey, these are two. So you can see this is how useless this is now. Originally, I had a whole bunch of cameras here that were listed as bridge, but as you can see on the bridge page, these two cameras are not pointing at a bridge, so they would be in the both column, and I would move them over here. Some of them that I thought would be good are on the roadways. I'm not sure why. Okay, these may be failing because all of the cameras changed. After, so another thing that happened was on if you look at the cameras, let's look at the page here. This has the so not only did the cameras change, the URLs changed at one
Mm.
point in time. So this looks like this is the correct form for what the camera angles look like. If we go to, let's keep this on top. If we go to the road and we see how that says unavailable, and then these aren't working, it looks like those URLs are changing. So if I go back to the page, look at the road. This uses the traffic prod. What does it say for road or bridge? Bridge, I think I updated this one. This one has traffic prod. Let me see what this looks like. Copy. Go back to road. These are not working. Page. Just put it side by side. Edit that. Let me see what's on my file system. I don't even have this guy. So let me add this to the workspace. So this is the GitHub repo. This find, oh, pardon me. This is the GitHub repo. This is the web app. This is for that repo. So in the repo, all right, we got to add. Oh, we haven't allow. This is the road. Let's get rid of all this stuff since these are other pages. That's the road and then the bridge. If I click on bridge, this should become green. Try that again. Console developer tools, I have some issues with it. Like here, it's highlighted and it's not showing green. Here, it's showing green, saying he's in sync, but he's not highlighted. So this tool has some problems. But let's look at the two comparing the URLs. So we know bridge is right. So let's take this source statement. Go to road. Now he's highlighted. That's good. Hmm. Did I copy the wrong thing? So on bridge, bridge is working. Let's see. Road. Well, that's the right form. I don't know why their thing is not updating. I'm not sure why. So let's do this. Let's refresh and see what that error was again. The whole point is that I'm trying to bridges work, roads are failing. That one definitely looks wrong. So that's the JavaScript. So that's the part down in JavaScript is the actual code. So let's look at road cameras, road JavaScript. That's the base camera URL. I see the problem. This is there's errors here. So this should be for this file system. This should be taken down to there. This one should be taken down there. This one should be taken down there. I didn't update these things all the time, but at least I'll show you this real quick. How to update this code.
Yeah,
It has
why don't you do like a replace all at one shot, because that is the same URL you are replacing manually one by one.
yeah. I don't have that many. To be honest with you, I should have done them in an array. So that's all I got. So I'll do Control S. I will drop those changes. I don't want to have them changed. So now that that's done, let's go over to this is not the right directory. The right one. This is a web app. This is MVP RC1. So make deploy. All right, so it'll take a second. It'll update it. I imagine probably the other one is not up to date either. While let's see how long this will take. This was the MVP RC1. All I was doing with it was saying these things need to be moved about, and it was just like looking at stuff. So the other thing I can say is up here while we're waiting, just as an issue that eventually I'll address, is MVP RC1. Um, all the remaining two items in the bridge page should be moved to both. And I'll fix that later. All right, so that's that. That's done. If we go back over here and we refresh this, hopefully this will work. So that's working. That's working. That's working. That's working. That's unavailable. That means that I have the camera URL correct, but the North Carolina Department of Transportation camera is messed up. So that's
Yeah,
it.
camera shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, so their cameras they break periodically. That's another problem. Over here to these, yeah, so these are correct. Um, one thing I want to show you here is the if I put it on actual size, this is like the best picture. This is the biggest camera that they've got. This is a huge image. It's much higher resolution than say this one or this one here, right? It's much higher resolution. But the problem is those never this image here never goes to a bridge. He only looks at the road. When I was doing this, I kind of made this odd thing. The odd thing was these are things that looked kind of good, but they were just had some weirdness in them. Uh, so, like this guy, he's a low resolution image, but because he's in the mountains, and it was kind of cool. Sometimes he would look at the tunnel, but it had problems where you can see a little bit of sun glare here now. You can because it's a low resolution picture. You can kind of see there's a little bit of sun problem, but he will have sun issues, moisture issues, and ice issues. Literally, like there'll be so much moisture on the camera you can't even see anything. And then when it was cold, the moisture never went away, so it was really problematic. Uh, this one having the hood, of course. I can't remember what the problem was here. But then I used also this page to say like how to draw a bounding box. And so if you switch, you could still draw a bounding box. And if you went away, well, that's sad. The bounding box didn't go away. At one point in time, the bounding box would go away when you select between them. I probably have an error in the code where something is updated. Let's see. Yeah. So that's there, but I think the JavaScript is handled. Also, another problem with this code was I had a mix of JavaScript being bundleized and yada yada yada. I bet you on the RC2 version of this that probably got fixed. So I don't have an odd page. So let's see. Let's draw a bounding box. If I switch, yeah. So on this one, that's worked. It had, I think the default label test may still work. Let's just see if that works. Predict. Yeah. So it came back saying it's a road of so many highway, but default labels don't give you a bounding box. So like if I go to this one, which doesn't have, let's go to one that has a bridge for sure. That has a bridge, right? So there. So okay. So here's what's interesting. That is definitely a bridge. The default doesn't even pick up a bridge. Sometimes it'll say like overpass, right? So I got to get stuff like that resolved, and that's why I'm trying to do it with the other one. The latest version, he uh so if you go here, this is just you see the predict is saying this is default, but if you go to the latest one, it's going to the custom label one, and I've disabled that. So the contest ended on February 7th, and the custom model is not running. Because when the custom, if you go back over here to this, let's go back to here. Inference hour is $4 per hour. So if I had that thing running at this point in time, I would be getting $4 an hour. And I screwed up and left that thing running overnight one night.
Yeah.
That was not a good. That's why I need to kill switch, because I was
Yeah.
just tired. I mean, I'm just working on it, working on it, working on it. We don't have a lot of minutes left. I'll show you this. So my goal is to use SageMaker, the ground truth, so that in the labeling jobs, I can create jobs and I can say, hey, can somebody help me label some images? When you do this, you can then feed it back over here, because in the custom labels project, you'll get to project section here, and it'll say like create data set. And one of the options is import images labeled by SageMaker ground truth, which was that thing I was just showing you. So the thing ends in less than a minute. Thanks for showing up. If you want to help me on the hackathon, I'm more than welcome to get your help. If you want to help me on the website in general, all you got to do is file an issue, do a get pull request, and we just work, and we learn by doing.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it on the weekends. If you don't have an invite to the hackathon, or if you don't have it into the Slack, we've got two Slacks. Look at the website. There's a Slack invite. Yes, sir. I'm John. Just say yes, John. Only people that call me sir is when I'm in trouble. Yeah. Thanks.
Actually, you are my senior, so I am saying you, sir.
Okay, very good. I appreciate your politeness.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir. Have a nice day.
Yeah, bye bye. Have a good
Bye.
day.